the driver behind the company that is running the museum, the plantation, their motivation is clearly business. The driver behind that is are the visitors who, for whatever reason, now the story is changing from them and their demand is changing. So I guess I would still have to go back and question where do we credit the desire for that change? Do we credit the desire for that change in terms of the national discourse, the national conversation evolving from this 1950, 1960 whitewashed version of American history to now we're having more adult conversations? We're having more realistic conversations. And when people go on these tours, they're not seeing the realistic conversations that are being had in the broader society. They're seeing a movie prop, basically. Are you there?
Yeah, it's edutainment, right? Which is, education and entertainment all blended together. And what you're seeing is that the stories, the narratives that they tell and that they show, they say these are historical. They're not historical. They're selectively historical. Accuracy is questionable. But really what they are is a reflection of modern day society. Mm-hmm. So what is being told or any visitor site is a reflection of current. If we were to go into one of these sites and start speaking in French from, 1841, no one's going to be interested in that. So you are telling a current story, and the fact that there is to change the narrative to meet the consumer's demand. That means the consumers are more comfortable with a messy story. And the messy story happens to include enslaved persons.
Yeah. And I think that is, like you already said, but to reiterate, it is a reflection of where we are right now. And as difficult as some people try to make it seem these conversations are, and how some people just want to avoid these conversations like the plague. It is evolving our culture, whether they want it to or not. I mean, we are addressing issues that let me say it like this. Black Lives Matter, the movement of Black Lives Matter, I feel, and this is just my personal estimation of it, they have brought a conversation to the national dialogue that is uniquely different than what has been discussed even through the civil rights era, right? Civil rights was about getting our rights, but now we're having a conversation about everything from beginning to the end of where we are right now. And we haven't really had a lot of mature national conversations. I can't say that right now it's mature, but still we're having a robust national conversation in public spaces about the jaded history of the United States of America, specifically with regard to African Americans, with regard to slavery, with regard to Jim Crow, with regard to the vestiges of white supremacy, with regard to all these things that still we feel affect us today, and that we feel need to be directly addressed. And I think now it is that much more easier. It's that easier for people to say, let's talk about a more accurate reflection of what really happened. We don't want, nor will we accept. It's not a matter of just this is not acceptable. We will no longer accept a whitewashed version, sanitized version of history, which takes me directly to the McGraw-Hill book. The McGraw-Hill book, in their World Geography book, for those of you who don't know, there's a video online, a viral video of a woman who's inspecting her son's book. And in that book, they refer to slaves as workers. That's problematic in itself, but it's compounded by the fact that this entire conversation was held in a immigration pattern chapter of the book. So it gave the impression that slaves were merely migrant workers. And so McGraw-Hill has decided to go back and fix this. This was a Texas textbook. So I dealt with this extensively on Monday's show. What are some of your thoughts about that, especially in regards to this entire concept of sanitizing history so that it's palatable to the dominant culture?
Sure. And I'm gonna sort of really hit hard here, which I may not have done so far. Number one is it was a huge error and it should have been caught by the editing staff and should have never been written in there by the author to begin with. It's just plain stupid, quite honestly. Number two is that McGraw-Hill's handling of this issue from a public relations standpoint abysmal. The right answer should have been, number one, they should have hired me to help them figure this out. But besides them not making that smart decision, what they should have done is immediately pulled back the print run of this book. Secondly, they should have fixed it and gave a huge apology. And third, they probably should have sponsored some sort of conference or dialogue on this, and probably even offered to put out a new textbook that deals with these issues from a different point of view, all within their resources, all within their capital stream. The reality of them saying, oh, we messed up. Oh, we'll handle it on the next print run. Oh, oops, my bad. No, we're talking about millions of people that were forced into slavery, forced onto ships that were cramped to where a lot of them died in the passage and thrown overboard to be eaten by sharks. If you survived that, you then showed up somewhere on an auction block and were sold in chains and then forcibly moved somewhere to go work for some organization. This isn't a worker. This isn't a migrant. This isn't someone with freedoms. This isn't even someone who has an indentured servitude that over a period of time you learn a skill, you escape from. You are owned. You have no rights. And this person who owns you could kill you, and there is no retribution.
Right.
That is a position that is horrible, that is unescapable. And the idea that you blend these with someone who's a migrant worker is completely inexcusable and misses the whole moral outrage and the outrage, the idea of slavery that still exists today in many places. Not institutionalized, but slavery still exists. And the idea that this is somehow in the wrong section is just a error of magnitude that's used that needs to be fixed immediately and not glossed over.
My question is always the why. Why and what could possibly have led them to do this? And I've gone into, I don't even think this is conspiracy theory so much as just a reflection of the kind of propagandistic time that we live in. The need to rewrite history so that it is acceptable to people who can't confront the reality of your history. Right. If you can't handle this next sentence, then you might be a victim of propaganda. America has done some pretty effed up things. We have some baggage. We have some issues. We've killed millions of people. We have enslaved, you guys enslaved, my ancestors. We killed millions of Native Americans just to acquire the land. We've done some terrible things. And to me, it seems as though there is a need to rewrite the history so that people never have to confront what we have done as a nation. So when we sing the national anthem and we say the Pledge of Allegiance, it's like they want to sing it and say it from a immaculate conception point of view, where here's America just popped out clean and pristine. But no, it was a really bloody, dirty, grimy, disgusting history. And there's a lot of people, I think, in America who don't want to come to terms with that. And I think for me, that's the reason I think this type of error was written into this book. But then you also see the rewriting in a lot of other books. There's an entire controversy from 2014 where they're trying to lambast the New Deal by FDR, and they're trying to, specific targeted political agendas. But from your perspective, why in the world would a professional organization like McGraw-Hill make an error of this magnitude? I can't accept that it's incompetence. Not when you have that many editors, that many doctors, that many professors who are serving on your board and who all ostensibly inspected this page. Why do you think they got away with that error?
All right, so let me cover all these concepts. You throw out all of these things, so let me get to as many of them. The United States has a very bloody history, but every country does. And we are probably the greatest country in the world that's ever listed, the ability of people to be mobile, the ability of people to move up in the world, the ability of there. So yes, we have this tainted history. Yes, it's nasty and it's brutish and all that stuff. However, at the same time, when you look at history, we also have the most progressive country that's ever existed. And so in some ways, wave the flag, be patriotic, but don't be blinded and don't be naive.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Second of all, is that there is a lot of white guilt out there around slavery in the United States. And a common occurrence is, well, I didn't own slaves, and my ancestors didn't, therefore I'm not culpable. Mm-hmm. And I think there is that level that's out there, and that leads to people saying, well, it wasn't so bad, or since my people didn't do it, therefore it's not an issue, etc. And they're missing the conversation. The conversation has not to do with who did or did not own slaves. The issue is that white dominant culture still exists, and the effects of slavery are still here today because we're still talking about racialized issues. Racialized issues come from the fact that people were taken from Central Africa and the West Coast, brought over here and transplanted against their will. Many of them died. They were bred, they were sold, separated. Not too many generations later, we're dealing with these aftermath. So it still exists. Now, why did the error making the book? I suspect because people don't want to talk about the issue, or they're ignorant, or whatever it is. But nevertheless, it's inexcusable. It is part of our history and needs to be addressed, and we need to face it head on if we're going to go through it. You don't run away from the pain. You run into the pain, you deal with it, you dialogue with it, and then you come out stronger on the backside.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100% in the terms of you run directly into it, especially with, I come from that same mold, right? I contrary to quite a few people, some who Dr. Butler, I love America. I'm quite okay with America, but I'm very sober in the reality of all of America's baggage, of all the things America has done, not only to my people, but to people across the globe. That doesn't mean nothing is going to be perfect. Our country can never be perfect because of what it was born out of, right? So I don't understand the concept of people needing to rewrite history to make it more palatable. When you look in the mirror, you don't ignore the reality that of what you've done to yourself, right? I think that's just a human failing. I don't know, it's some psychological disorder, what's going on there. But the reality of it is confront it head on so that we can make the changes necessary to, one, never make those mistakes again, but then two, address the residuals, the vestiges of those mistakes. But if we rewrite history, then there's no culpability. There's no responsibility to fixing something because, well, we've just rewritten the text and slavery really wasn't that bad. It was migrant workers. And so since it was migrant workers, we have no responsibility to the effects of slavery that are still being felt hundreds of years later. So to me, it's not only a way of making America more acceptable to people who don't want to own up to America's past. It's also a way of making them not responsible for addressing all of the things that are a direct extension of hundreds of years of forced labor, slavery. So that's my thing. So it's not only do they need to fix this mistake, but I think it's a learning, not even a learning opportunity. It is a phenomenal opportunity to address the reasons why they would do that in the first place, right? McGraw-Hill, don't just clean this up. Let's talk about why you felt it was necessary to do it in the first place. And I think that would be more, that would help the national conversation more, but then it would also expose this, I don't even know the word to describe it, but fatuous is probably best. This fatuous desire to rewrite America so that we don't have to face all of the things that we've done in the past. I'll let you get the last word on that, Dr. Butler. And I know that you've given me a time frame that you have to make a move. So why don't you get the last word and tell everyone about your research and how they can get in touch with you if they ever want to follow up on any of your comments here.
Sure. So I agree with you that there is a fundamental issue here. And in fact, the fact that we're in 2015 and this error was made by one of the leading publishing companies is inexcusable and needs to be fixed. And so far what they've done is, I think, draw more. I think they've added fuel to the fire. I don't think they realize the magnitude of the mistake and the national dialogue. They've stepped in the proverbial hot mess.
Yeah.
Number two is the fact that this was caught and the dialogue around this happened is a very positive thing. Me. Imagine this went to print and everyone's like, okay, well, this is accepted. This is what they do. No, people are not taking this lying down. People are turning to social media. People are having this conversation. this is indicative